Chief State Court Judge Pamela South. I'm Sonia Davis Bay, and I'm a board member of Gwinnett County Family Violence Task Force.
And I'm Amber Walton, Vice President of the Task Force.
And I'm Pam South. I'm the Chief State Court Judge here in Gwinnett County, and I'm happy to be here.
And we'll start off, Judge, if you don't mind just giving us a little information about yourself.
Well, I have been a judge here in Gwinnett County since 2001, and before that, I was a prosecutor for the Gwinnett County District Attorney's Office. And for about 5 of the years that I was there, I specialized in child abuse cases and young adult sexual assault cases. I also did, before that, I was in private practice briefly for about a year and a half. And I went to the University of Georgia, School of Law. Go Dogs. Okay. So.
Well, we want to get to know more about you, so can you tell us a bit about your background?
Yes. Well, first and foremost, my dad was a sergeant in the Air Force, and I grew up on military bases across the United States. But my home was also in the very northeast corner of Mississippi. And both my parents grew up in the same county, and both of them grew up on farms, which is why I think my dad wanted to run off and join the military when he was a young man. He did not want to work on a farm. My mother was one of 11 children, and they grew up on a very big farm, and she had a pretty hard life. And that was a big influence on me, quite frankly, is that I got to hear a lot as I was growing up, really about the poverty that they grew up in, because her family was hit very hard by the Depression. And it was a real struggle to feed 11 children on a farm.
I can imagine.
So that was a huge, factor of, of my life and my growing up. And so I would come back to North Mississippi to see my big extended family on my father's side and my mother's side in a small town. But we also lived in different areas across the United States. I never made it up to Detroit. But I did live in Massachusetts for a few years. We lived overseas for a few years. We lived in D.C. for a while. So I got to see a lot of the country as I was growing up.
Okay. So with those type of beginnings and everything, what type of barriers did you face, trying to get your education, going to college, those type of things, and what kind of barriers did your parents have to overcome to get you to that point too?
Well, money was a problem. I'll be real honest with you. I have a sister who's a year younger than I am. So my parents, who were really blue-collar workers, were faced with trying to put 2 girls through college almost at the same time. And I was lucky. We lived very close to a community college, and I got a scholarship, and that helped a whole lot. And both my parents were working at that time. And by that time, we had moved back to Mississippi. So, but having to kind of know that money was tight, and I didn't have a car. My first year of college, later my sister and I, we felt very lucky that we got one car that we got to share, which we argued over all the time. But we had that car, and then both of us ended up at the university together. And but again, money was tight, and we look back at it and go, wow, we didn't realize though that we didn't have a lot of things other people had, because we were just happy to get what we did have, which was really good, a college education. That was very important to my mother, because she never finished high school. She her family work life was so much that she had to quit school when she was in high school. And that was one thing she said: you are going to college. I don't care what I have to do. You're going to college.
So what drew you to this career in the legal field?
I think I kind of came upon it by accident. I was not one of those people that I saw myself going to law school or becoming a lawyer when I was in college. I wanted to be a photojournalist. That's what I wanted to be. And
I get some good photos in court.
I rapidly found out that, I needed a steady job.
Yeah.
So, so I went to work when I graduated from college as a researcher because my background was in English and composition and writing. And I worked for a few years as a researcher and worked on a master's degree. And still I wasn't really quite satisfied. And by that time I was working at a university, and I ended up taking a course in business law and the philosophy of law. And I thought, this is very interesting. And I think I want to go to law school. So I didn't go to law school until I was 28 years old. And I was living in Starkville, Mississippi at the time, and had a friend who grew up in Columbus, Georgia. And he said, I know where you need to go to law school. You need to go to the University of Georgia. And so I thought, wow, I need to check that school out. So that's how I ended up here in Georgia. And I never really looked back once I got here because I loved it so much.
Oh, good.
I heard you mention satisfied.
Yes.
Are you satisfied with your career?
I really am. I have to tell you, and I've had a lot of friends that I went to law school with who had all kinds of different legal careers. When we get together and talk, I always come out and say, I never had a day when I didn't want to go to work. I loved my job. When I was in the courtroom as a prosecutor, when I was in the courtroom as a defense attorney, very briefly as it was, when I have been in the courtroom as a judge. And I think a lot of it is that I really enjoy the people contact. I really love to see people come into court and see how their lives unfold. And sometimes it's tragic. I mean, sometimes it's awful. I mean, you know that it's very difficult for some people, and for some people you're really hopeful that the court case will enable them to pick up the pieces of their lives. But that's been the big satisfaction, is that you are there, you are with people every day, and that you really get to see life itself in the courtroom.
So with it being Women's History Month, what are
Yes.
some of the barriers that you faced? And we've talked to some of the other judges, and it seems like there's some similarities with it. What are some barriers you faced being a woman inside of the court system, which is pretty much male dominated?
Yes. And less so than it was. When I got out of law school in 1988, our law school class was probably about 30 or 40% female, and that was a huge sea change, because in earlier years it was kind of a gradual buildup. It really was male dominated, and the field that I wanted to be in was male dominated, and that was I wanted to be a trial lawyer. But I have to say this, as I got out, I think a lot of the people that hired me simply looked at ability. They wanted someone who was ready to go into the courtroom. And so I didn't face what I felt like, and maybe it was because it was the 80s, and people were ready for change. When I came to work for the DA's office, the DA at the time, Tom Waller, who hired me, we had a lot of women in the office. When I was hired by a small law firm, I was the only female in the office. And in a small rural county, I do have to say there were some times that I looked around and I did not see a lot of other women lawyers, but that was 1988. And I think things have really changed. And I will say this, I think I always felt as a woman entering to what had been a traditional male field, that I had to work harder. That I had to work harder. I had to be my absolute best. I had to put my A game out there every day. Every day. And in many ways, that was a challenge. And it made me, I think, really strive and work harder. I just thought, I've got to work harder than everybody else because I can't fail. So.
Well, I had a couple of fill-in-the-blank questions for
all right.
you, so I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay. Oh my goodness. Fill in the blank.
Good to
All
know,
right.
Judge Tom.
Okay. All right.
I can set example for young women by.
I think by by realizing that the only thing that will ever hold you back is yourself. I believe in being a self-competitor, which means this: don't compare yourself to other people. Look at yourself and say, am I the best that I can be? And I would always tell someone who was wanting to do the things that I wanted to do, throw everybody else off to the side and focus on you. And if you do, and put your focus, and be realistic with yourself, like, I could have done a better job with that, or I can do this better, and look at yourself, I think you will get there. I think you will become the person that you want to be. But you do have to be very realistic with yourself, and you have to be willing to take criticism and take it in and give yourself criticism and understand that that's part of changing and growing, is that you're willing to look at yourself and go, I could have done that better.
And also, a woman who currently inspired me is, and also I want you to give me a current woman that inspires you and a past woman that inspires you.
Well, I would have to say women. I have to say the current group of women that I find inspiring are women who are running for office right now. I have been, those women inspire me because for so long it seemed that women were not running for office. And now, oh my goodness, you pick up a ballot.
Yeah.
There are women on that ballot. That is so inspirational, and I'm glad that women are realizing that their opportunity is there. They can get elected, and I will note our bench here in Gwinnett County is becoming very women-centric. I mean,
Yes, it
we
is.
have right now on our Gwinnett County bench. I mean, we're a bench of 6 in the Gwinnett County State Court. We have 4 women, 2 men.
Yes.
So I really do think that's inspirational, and women are running to be judges now, and I think that's a great thing. I think women have said, I can do that. Why not me? I can do that too, and I think that should be inspiring to every woman out there, that there is no job that you really can't do if you're willing to put the work in.
Do you think, and you said that, when you graduated law school, people were ready for change. There was,
Yes.
the tide was turning, women were coming out and doing what they needed to do. Do you think that's kind of that atmosphere is happening again with the elections and women running for offices and essentially not taking no for an answer?
I agree. I think for a while, when I was coming through law school in the 80s, I think the women were really moving into the workplace. Women were graduating from college in higher numbers, and they were ready to enter the workplace. And then I think there was kind of a lull, and I think what's happened is that women are once again graduating in record numbers from college and going, hey, I want a bite of the apple. I too want to see what I can do with my life, and they're challenging themselves even more.
That's true. And of course, there's no complete recipe for the perfect attorney, but if there's an attorney watching this, what would you say makes the makeup of a good attorney?
I have to say number 1 on my list is integrity. I really believe that as a lawyer, you have to be a leader in terms of your honesty and your integrity. And that you have to be honest with the court, and that you have to really follow the rules of professional conduct as it relates to lawyers. That's number 1. And then number 2, I think you have to work hard. And I think you have to work hard especially for vulnerable people. I think you have to realize that there are vulnerable people in the world, and that part of what we do as lawyers is that we're part of the system that provides justice for everyone. And that is an obligation, I think, of our bar, is to put everything we've got into providing the best services that we can for everyone in the court system. Be they a victim, be they a defendant. We need to be sure that we do that.
And I know you've been on the bench for quite some time and you run some treatment courts.
Yes.
Do you have a great success story?
You know, I do. I had not been on the bench all that long, and I had an attorney and the state come and talk to me, and it was a woman who had gotten multiple DUIs in a very, very short period of time. And she was a middle-aged lady, and the lawyer said she has lost everything. She was a real estate agent. She lost all that. She had a house, that's gone. Her husband left her. Her family doesn't want to have anything to do with her, and here she is. And I would ask you to consider something besides just locking her up forever. And obviously, she had multiple DUIs, so she did have to spend some time in jail. But I said, well, I'm going to give you a chance. I will go, as long as you're getting treatment and staying sober, I'm going to give you a chance. And she came through with flying colors. She stopped drinking. She got her life back together. She got out of jail. She got a job. She got her own place again. And I ran into her in a grocery store like 4 or 5 years later. And she said, I just want to tell you, you gave me a chance. And I was determined that I was going to live up to that trust. And look at me. She was like, I've got a job. I'm not quite back where I was, but I'm doing great. And I heard from her again just another year or so ago. And it was, it just, when you know that there are people who take opportunities and just run with them, it really makes you feel good about the criminal justice system, because we really want to change behavior. We're not here to destroy people, to crush lives. We are here to say this is not good behavior. It's not good for the community, and it's not good for you. How can we change that?
And just for some of our followers that may not know what drug or what treatment courts are, can you just give a little bit of information on what the treatment courts are?
Well, a treatment court is there to provide and ensure and require treatment as opposed to simply punishment. So if you have an alcohol problem or if you have a drug problem, the focus of that court will be that we will put treatment first and punishment will be placed on the back burner so that we can address the real problem, the addiction to either alcohol or to drugs or to whatever it is that's causing the problem. And it has been enormously successful. It is really, I think, changed the attitude, excuse me, of a lot of judges who for a while all we had was punishment. I'll give you a little story. Years ago, I had an elderly gentleman who right before Christmas was facing me on a probation revocation. And I said, oh my goodness, what can we do? He had violated probation by getting a DUI. And his probation officer said, Judge, well, he was on probation for DUI, and he got another DUI. And she said, and by the way, he's had 10 prior DUIs.
Whoa.
And I was like, oh my goodness. And I was like, sir, why did you get a DUI? And he said, my son just died, and I just couldn't make it through his funeral without having a drink. And I said, well, I really don't have a choice, but I have to incarcerate you. And I said, how much treatment have you had? And he said, ma'am, I've never had any treatment. That shocked me. And I really felt that the system had failed him by not ensuring or requiring that he had gotten treatment for what was clearly his issue. He was an alcoholic. And so that story to me has resonated with me because that was probably 17 years ago. And we've come a long way in those 17 years. We now have more funding. We are able to provide help with treatment. We have a wonderful community mental health provider here in Gwinnett County that offers an array of services. We're getting better at it. We're getting a lot better.
And I think with the treatment courts, what I've seen that makes it different than if they're just going in, you know, the family's like, oh, we'll put them in treatment, is you have a court system backing you. And, you know, you either do this or here's the alternative. So people have that incentive to get that treatment they need.
They know if they don't get it, they will face some level of punishment. And for some people, that's the big push that they need to get that kind of treatment. And sometimes it takes a push because people fall back into really bad habits. You know, like, oh, I've had a bad day at work, there's a convenience store, let me stop and get a six-pack. And as I've said many times, a six-pack of beer is not a therapist. It's not helpful to whatever problem you may have.
Right.
So
And that six-pack might be a couple thousand in legal fees.
it probably will be.
And just to wrap things up, for all the young ladies and the women out there ready to change the world, what is your best advice for them?
Have confidence in yourself. I see a lot of young women who are like, oh, am I really good enough? I want to tell you, you are. You are good enough to get out there and to do what it is that's important to you. Just keep that confidence. If you don't have it, start building it today, because you can do anything you want to do. If you're willing to work hard, you can do it. All right, you just have to want it, and you have to be willing to work for it. So I say, get that confidence and get out there and change the world. It's waiting for you.
Well, just thank you so much for taking time to talk with us.
Oh, thank y'all.
Thank you.
Two of my favorite people, so I'm
Y'all
happy,
heard that. Right,
happy
favorite.
to do
Don't
it.
ask for any favorites, though.
Yes, that's right. And Ebony, thank you for
Yes.
doing a good job.